All right. So to begin, my name is Emily Breen. I'm a resilience planner with the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, or DCR. I'm in the Office of Resilience Planning, and I'll be co-leading today's presentation alongside Liz Foster and Gabrielle Rosario from Dewberry. Liz and Gabrielle, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz Foster. I'm a senior resilience planner with Dewberry. We're helping DCR host the inventory update and are also going to help make sure all of your project and initiative data that you share with us during this process gets correctly displayed on the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Gabrielle Rosario. I also work for Dewberry as a resilience planner, and I'll be supporting this update. You may have received a few emails from me that will be going over how to access or open those emails.
Awesome, thank you. So for the remainder of our introductions, if everybody could note their name and the locality or the organization you work for, that would be great. And we all have a sense of who's on the call today. So real quickly, why we're here today. The main goal of the call today is to provide you all with an opportunity to ask any questions you might have regarding the projects and initiatives update. For the sake of level setting, we are going to start with a really brief overview of the DCR's Office of Resilience Planning and what the projects and initiatives update is all about. So we'll have a brief tutorial as well on how to access and update your data. And then we're going to turn it over to you for questions and answers. So with this in mind, if you could hold your questions until we get to the Q&A session, that would be excellent. If you have any burning questions and you want to jot them into the chat while you have them top of mind, we'll address those first when we get to the question and answer session. Okay, so quick overview of Office of Resilience Planning. Some of you have worked with us in the past, but for those of you who haven't, the mission of our office is to distribute knowledge and coordinate action to achieve a flood resilience future for Virginia through informed planning and proactive intergovernmental solutions. And we accomplish this mission through 4 major lines of effort that you see on the slide there. We develop and implement state-led flood resilience plans. So to that, we actually have 2 plans that we're working on, the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan and the Coastal Resilience Master Plan. Some of you may have heard of the Coastal Resilience Master Plan, Phase 2. We recently wrapped public comments on that plan. So for those of you who provided feedback, thank you. We'll be working to address those comments and move the document to finalization over the next several months. The Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan is also in development. This is a statewide plan, and we expect to have a draft available for public comment in the spring of 2027. So the second sort of line of effort that you see there is coordinating action. We coordinate action among state agencies, local governments, NGOs. We are in the early planning stages for our annual flood preparedness coordination meeting. That will be held virtually in the fall. So some of you may be hearing some communication about that over the next couple of months. That third column there, supply, data, information, and resources. So we do this through several different ways. We have a Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, which we'll put a link to in the chat. One of the tools it houses is the Projects and Initiatives Inventory, which we'll obviously get into a little more detail in a minute. We also have an open data portal. These are the primary ways in which we make the data that we produce available to you to use in resilience planning, in project planning. We also support developing custom data packages. So if you're ever interested in actually going beyond just viewing the data, we can help you with how to actually access the data so you can manipulate it. And then that last line there, that last line of effort, conduct outreach and engagement, fairly self-explanatory. We attend conferences and meetings. We have webinars like today. If your agency or organization would ever like to learn more about DCR's flood resilience planning or data efforts, you can always reach out to us. You can contact me directly or to the flood resilience email that we'll put up on a slide at the end of this presentation. So that's a quick little overview of the Office of Resilience Planning. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the projects and initiatives inventory. So what is it? Hopefully you've had a chance now to click on the link and explore a little bit. But just in case you haven't, this is a mechanism for communities to highlight their flood resilience efforts and needs. And it works essentially by you providing data on your flood resilience efforts, which we then, either that is input directly into the website, or we will input that for you, and then it is displayed in this Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. And this Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, or Projects and Initiatives Inventory tool, is an interactive tool that allows users to access some of the information and explore some of the information about the efforts that we have ongoing across coastal Virginia. So here's a quick zoom in of a project. This is in Hampton, and it shows you, so there's a shapefile there, or point data, whichever data you're able to provide. And then off to the right, you'll see some of the information that you'll provide in the Excel spreadsheet, things like expected implementation cost, things like the type of project it is, where it is in terms of development. Is it at the assessment stage? Is it at the shovel ready stage? And then we actually, this is fairly new in the updated Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. It also connects to some funding opportunities that might apply to a project like this. This is an example of an initiative. So these are things like plans, studies, policies, data collection efforts, or education initiatives that your locality might be working on. Again, pretty similar information that is displayed in the viewer. We're looking at things like expected cost, the type of project, and the hazards addressed. So a quick history on the current inventory. The first data call that we ever had for this was in 2021. The last data call occurred in 2024, and that was to kick off the update of the Coastal Resilience Master Plan. And you'll see as we get into this that, and if you've had a chance to look at the Coastal Resilience Master Plan, the data that was provided in 2024 is summarized in the Coastal Resilience Master Plan Phase 2. So currently there's approximately 950 projects and initiatives displayed in the inventory. We estimate about 40% of localities in the coastal region submitted data. So we really, in this update, are hoping to up that percentage. And then you might be wondering, well, how, we're going to provide you all this data, we're going to spend all this time to do this. How was the data used the last time? So as I mentioned, this was the focus of Chapter 3 in the Phase 2 of the plan, Advancing Flood Resilience. So it provides some really cool figures and statistics and summary information about where effort is happening, where there are gaps, where more support might be needed. We present this information at events, conferences, external reporting, and it informs our programming and our technical support. So some considerations for this 2026 update. We heard we've been compiling information, we've been listening to feedback that we've been hearing from you over the last few years about how this process has gone in the past. So we hope that the changes we've implemented this year in terms of addressing capacity constraints, providing technical support, providing additional options for sharing project spatial information, and being responsive to providing more instructions and answering questions. We hope that we have addressed some of those concerns, some of those challenges from past updates. But of course, we are always open to feedback. So we're always welcome to hear from you, or we welcome comments from you. So how will the update work? Gabrielle's going to get into this in detail, but at a really high level, what has been provided to you are a series of spreadsheets with information about the projects and initiatives that you've previously inputted into the inventory. You're going to have an opportunity to update those, add new projects and initiatives. From there, we will do a quick Q&A. Not going to change any information other than if there's an obvious error, we'll reach out to you and make sure we're in conversation with you about that. Then we'll input it into the user portal, and it'll show up in the viewer online, and we'll let you all know once that has occurred. So we do need both descriptive data and spatial data in order to have your project or initiative show in the Coastal Web Explorer. So last thing that I'm going to say before I turn it over to Gabrielle for the tutorial, why participate in this update? We put a few reasons that we think are important for updating the inventory, for keeping this something that is fresh and is a resource for folks. We see this as a way to help decision makers advocate for additional flood resilience resources for you. It helps DCR understand where increased investment is needed to mitigate risk. It can shape the direction of DCR's flood resilience programs and technical assistance. And we hope that it can be used to identify potential funding opportunities and support regional collaboration and help identify potential partnerships at that regional scale. When we're always curious to know how you as localities or as organizations might also be leveraging this data, either internally or to support your own efforts. So we would love to hear about that from you once we get to the Q&A session. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Gabrielle to give us a quick tutorial.
Great, thanks. This is Liz. I'm going to jump in. So we're going to step through step by step how to submit your project and initiative data so that it will display in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. We've got about 15 slides. We're going to give you the 101 of the process, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer any questions. So please drop questions in the chat, drop questions in the Q&A button that you see, or when we get to that point, we'll open up the floor and anybody can unmute and ask any specific questions that you might want. I'll emphasize as we go through, our hope is that the process that we've put in place for the 2026 update is less data entry, less hands-on typing for you all to do. We've also provided a few additional options for sharing spatial data, so you have a little bit more control over how your projects display in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer and the CRWE, and we'll point out some of those options as we've gone along. Last thing I'll emphasize is that all of the data that we're talking about here today that has been preloaded into Excel sheets for each locality or each entity that is driving a resilience project or initiative, all of that information comes from data that was submitted in those previous updates that Emily shared. And so none of this is information that DCR has kind of pulled from any plans that you have or has entered themselves. This is all information that is currently public on the CRWE and has been shared in previous iterations. And so what we're going to go over is every locality in coastal Virginia has a custom Excel sheet pre-populated with all of the information that is currently in the CRWE. Hopefully it's in a really easy format to just skim through and update. So you all have kind of a custom sheet ready for you. So we'll go over how to access that, how to review and enter the data that are in those sheets, and then we'll share a little bit about how we're going to kind of put that back in the Web Explorer and what you'll see. So we'll walk through that in detail, and then we'll come back and answer any questions you have. But the very first step is, of course, accessing those custom Excel sheets and finding them on a SharePoint site we've set up.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'll be walking through how to access the SharePoint site and opening the files and folders. So Emily sent out an email, I think it was last week, with a link to this survey. DCR requires that entities provide their email addresses to ensure a secure process. So please click on this survey link and it'll lead you to this image on the right, and you'll be filling out your name, organization, and email in order to request access to the SharePoint site. If you have multiple people who are supporting your update, please submit multiple forms so we can add each of the email addresses. Once you submit the form, you'll be receiving an email from myself or from Liz within 1 to 2 days, giving you access to the SharePoint site. You'll receive an email that looks like this. It will say that I've shared a folder with you, and you can click on the button that says open, or you can use the link to access the SharePoint site. Next slide. When you click on that button, you'll go to the home page and you'll see what looks like the image on the left, where at the top you'll see an instructions folder with a video tutorial, detailed instructions, and more, as well as a template. And it's split up by PDCs and RCs. There's also a folder for state agencies, and for those of you that are part of an academic organization or a nonprofit, you can click on the folder that says Other Project and Initiative Owners. So navigate to your relevant folder, click on the folder, and then on the right, you'll see the list of files, which are split up by entity name. As you can see on the right, each of these files has your locality name at the front. To open it in the best format, you'll want to click on the 3 dots, which appear when you hover over the file. Click on those 3 dots and open it in your desktop. So click open and then click open an app. If you don't have Excel, you'll want to click directly on the file to open it in your web browser. Slide. When you open up the file, this is what you'll see. At the top, there will be a bar that says Enable Content, and in order to start editing the file, you'll want to click on that. Next slide. Once you click on that button, you'll receive a pop-up that says, do you want to make this a trusted document? You'll want to click yes. And then you're able to start editing the document. To make sure that you're saving it correctly to the SharePoint site and that it's auto-saving, check the top left corner and see that the autosave is turned on and that the save has a green cycle next to it. You can navigate the tabs at the bottom to start working on it. So at the bottom, you have the instructions, projects, initiatives, and additional resources.
And if we could just flip back one slide, I'm just going to point out a few other things so that you feel really well oriented when you open up your Excel document. If at any point you get lost or run into an issue, that additional resources tab does have contact information to request assistance. So you'll see the email address for the Office of Resilience Planning on there, as well as some contact information for PDCs and RCs. So if you're in the document, you get a little lost, please don't hesitate to reach out for assistance. So this is a kind of a blank template. So if you're a locality or an entity that is working on a flood resilience project or initiative right now, but you don't think that you've contributed data in the past, that's okay. It's great that you're here now. We really appreciate that. You will get a spreadsheet that looks like this, and that will be blank, and you will go through and enter data in the rows that you see here. For entities that have previously submitted data, you will see that data pre-populated in the spreadsheet. One thing to pay attention to is the columns at the top of the screen. This is the type of information that we're requesting you review or add for each project and initiative. The ones that are shaded and colored and in blue are really important. These are the ones that are required for display on the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. So the data has to be input in those columns for your project and initiative to display correctly on the CRWE and for DCR to complete their reporting activities. So if you are limited on time, focus on those blue columns. And then on the next slide, we have an example of what a sheet looks like when it's been pre-populated. So if you'll see here on the right, so if you're an entity that has submitted data before, you will see some of the rows already populated with all of the project data. So project name, who submitted it last time, a description of what the project is, some of those categories like the project type or the hazard addressed that are on the CRWE that Emily showed earlier. And so the steps here are to review the data that's already in the spreadsheet, then to go through and add any new data. And then we'll talk a little bit about what to do with spatial information. So for existing efforts, for all of the data that you already see in the spreadsheet, again, go through and focus on those blue shaded columns. If you're really limited on time, we'd encourage you to look at the phase and the cost columns first. So the phase is what's going on with that project or initiative. Is it something that's proposed? It's in the planning phase. Maybe this is something that 2 years ago you recognized in one of your resilience plans as a proposed project, but you've been able to make some progress on it. Maybe you found a little funding for it, or you found a partnership, or you've been able to move it forward in another way. Changing the phase name in the appropriate column is one way to recognize that action and make sure that your efforts are accurately displaying in the CRWE. When you are done kind of going through and reviewing all of the existing information for your projects and initiatives, please go back to the start of the Excel column or the Excel sheet. In column B, which is called 2026 update status, there's a drop-down menu there for you to indicate what kind of review you gave. So you can say I reviewed and no changes are needed. You can say I reviewed and made changes. You can also there's an option for please delete this. So if this is an initiative that is no longer a priority or you've decided is no longer going to move forward for whatever reason, you have the option to indicate that and we will remove it from the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. So if you do not want that displayed, if it's no longer relevant or for any other reason, you have the option to indicate that in column B and we will remove it. You also have the option to note that if it's a new addition, which is exciting. And so for new additions, either for projects or initiatives, you just start a new row. So below all of the pre-existing data, you'll just enter in the columns going across left to right, the relevant information for each project. Again, please focus on the blue shaded columns if you're short on time. Remember to go back at the end and fill out column B. And as you're going, if you have questions about what exact information is required, or you want to see some examples of potential answers, we have descriptions, definitions, examples for every information category in the instructions on the SharePoint. So that'll be in that instructions folder, which is the first thing you see when you log on, and you can kind of use that to go step by step and column by column if you'd like. I don't think anybody would, but please don't add any columns on the Excel sheet. If there's new data that you're entering, we can't necessarily display it in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. If you do want to add just some general notes about the project or initiative, there is a notes column at the end and you can use that. That won't go on the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, but DCR would see it. So that's your best option there. So that's how to enter the descriptive data. For location data, there are a couple additional options this year. So there are 3 ways to submit location information for your projects and initiatives. You can pick one of these location options and just go with it and kind of use the method that's easiest for you. You can also mix and match these. Depending on the information that you have available or what's easiest for you or how you want that project and initiative to best display in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. So going kind of through them left to right, the first option that you have is directly in that Excel spreadsheet. There is a column in both the initiatives and the projects tab called geographic location. It is pre-populated, it's a drop-down menu, and you can go through and select all of the options that apply. It'll probably just be one option. You can, select your community name or your county name, or maybe your PDC or RC name, and this will show your project or initiative as covering all of that geographic area in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. So this is a really good option for something like a capacity building initiative where maybe you're doing community-wide education, or maybe it's a risk mapping project and you want to show the whole area that it's covering. So that's a really good option for those types of projects and initiatives. If you want your activity to show up more as a specific point on the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, coordinates are another really good way to share location data. So there's a column in the Excel spreadsheet for coordinates. If you want to give those, you can. If not, you can leave it blank. And you can just copy paste in the coordinates for your specific project or initiative. If you'd like your project or initiative to display as a point, but it actually does cover kind of a larger area, we would suggest just taking kind of the middle, the centroid part, and taking the coordinate from there. So the example you see on the screen is from Google Maps. So go to any mapping platform on a web browser, click or type in a specific address, and it should give you the coordinates formatted as you need to just quick copy paste into the Excel sheet. So hopefully that's pretty easy for everybody. The third way that you could share location data for your projects and initiatives is with a shapefile. And so you can, if you already have all of these locations mapped, you can upload that to SharePoint. It would be great if you could do that in the appropriate folder where your Excel document is. That'll help us keep efforts together. And then what we'll ask is that in the Excel sheet with your descriptive data, that you just let us know the name of each project and initiative as it is named in your shapefile, so that we can make sure that your descriptive information is matching your location information when it displays on the Web Explorer. So again, 3 options for sharing location data. If you have already submitted this information, so in previous years, if you're just updating a project, you're not submitting a new one, and you're happy with how it's displaying in the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, you don't necessarily need to change or send us any new shape files. This is just for anybody who wants to change how their project or initiative is getting displayed, or anybody who's submitting spatial location for the first time for their project or their initiative. All right, and last but not least, how do you wrap up the process? So at this point, you've submitted your access request, you've gotten to the SharePoint site, you've found the file where your Excel sheet is in, you've gone through, you've reviewed your data, you've entered any new data, that includes your spatial location information, and you are done. At this point, all you need to do is just close that Excel file. At that point, it's good to check that it is actually saving. But as long as you've opened that file directly from SharePoint in the desktop app, everything should have saved back. A good way to check that is to look at the modified and the modified by columns back in your SharePoint folder. So you should see the date you last made a change. It should give you the day and the time, so you can be really specific about it. And you should see your name in the modified by column. If for whatever reason you enter in all your data, you're feeling really good about it, maybe you share the spreadsheet with somebody else from your organization and they've requested access and you'd like them to review or maybe just add a few things of their own, and for some reason they have overwritten your data or deleted your data or made changes you didn't want them to make, please don't panic. Please don't spend the time to re-enter all that data. We are running regular backups of SharePoint. It's one of the reasons to use this system. So please, if that situation occurs, if you're not sure if your data is saving, just reach out to the Office of Resilience Planning. We can help confirm that the changes have saved. We can also pull old data if you need to kind of just go back to a previous version. So just know that there's a bit of a backup option there in case you run into trouble. And last thing I'll highlight here is that this is actually a screenshot of the instructions page on SharePoint. And so you'll see, as Gabrielle mentioned, that there is a PDF file that is the step-by-step instructions with descriptions for all of these different categories. And then the last thing, the last file that you see there in purple is a video tutorial. It's just about 5 minutes long. It's really quick and simple. And that'll walk you through all of these steps, kind of showing it live on your screen if you need a refresher at any point. All right, so in terms of next steps, I just want to reiterate the timeline. So this SharePoint site is open from now through the end of August. So please submit your data by August 31st. If at any point from now to the end of August, you have questions, you have concerns, you just want to make sure that you're doing things correctly, please don't hesitate to reach out to DCR or to your PDC or RC contact. We are happy to help. Once that data submission period closes, we are going to do a quick quality check. Emily mentioned this at the beginning of the call, but we are not going to be changing any information that you have entered. You all have the most knowledge about your projects and initiatives. You know how you want them to best display on the Web Explorer. We're not going to change that. What we are going to look for is any errors that might incorrectly affect the display. So for example, if maybe there's a typo in a coordinate and we see that a project is showing up in another state, we're going to reach out to you to validate the location and make sure that your projects and initiatives are showing up correctly in the Web Explorer. So we'll do a QC for errors like that. And then once we're satisfied that all the data is in a good format, we'll bulk upload all of the new changes to the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer, and we'll send around a note to everybody when that happens so that you can go on and validate that all of your activities are displaying correctly, and you can share that with any stakeholders that might be interested. So I'll just say in closing, we know that about 40% of coastal localities, along with some state agencies and universities and nonprofits and others, have submitted data to the inventory. We really appreciate that. As Emily shared, it's been helpful for DCR to see for their programming. It's also a big highlight in the Coastal Resilience Master Plan, this phase 2 that's in draft form and coming out soon. But the more data that we have in that inventory, the more we can communicate and understand the resilience activities that are happening all across the Commonwealth. So thank you in advance for contributing to that. We're just going to answer a couple quick common FAQs, and then we'll pause and take questions and answer any remaining concerns that you have. So I'll point out real quick that, again, all of the information that you submit in these Excel sheets, it's going to get displayed on the Coastal Resilience Web Explorer. The link is in the chat and on the screen. If you have any questions, please contact the Office of Resilience Planning. It'd be great if you copy your PDC or RC contact. They might have some additional guidance or additional insight that they can help provide. And again, deadline to keep in mind is August 31. We'd ask that you review all of your existing data or communicate any additions by that date.
All right. Thank you for that, Liz. So with that, we are going to open this up for question and answer. Let's see, I'm not sure if we had any questions in the chat. Not seeing anything, so I'll turn it over to you all.
And Emily, if you end sharing, we'll be able to see anything that comes through as folks are chatting. But any questions from folks here about how to access the SharePoint site? Anybody here tried to get in and experience any access issues that we could solve for you? Hoping that's a no, which is great. I'm going to drop the access link in the chat in just a second. So if you haven't gotten access yet, it'll be there for you to use.
Hey everybody, this is Carolyn. How are you? Thanks for the great presentation. I don't have a question, but I did just want to share. I know there was an inquiry Emily made at the top about how are localities using this process for their own benefits or to their own planning ends. So I just wanted to share in Henrico County, we are currently working on updating our resilience plan, our local resilience plan with CFPF funding, and the timing of this inventory update aligns pretty well with where we're at in the planning process, where we're trying to create our own local projects and initiatives inventory for that plan. And so we're kind of using this process to collect that data internally. So I'm kind of creating an internal version of the spreadsheet that includes all of the required DCR columns and some additional fields that we want to collect for our resilience plan, gathering that information, and then using kind of that for both the inventory update on our own resilience plan. So just wanted to share that that is going on here in Henrico.
That's awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. And great to hear from you.
Yeah.
Has anyone on this call, have you all, I think Liz already asked this, but I'm assuming you all have had a chance to access the Excel spreadsheets. Any questions in terms of, yeah, I'm seeing a thumbs up from Carolyn. Any issues with drop downs or questions about like the spatial data and how to get that in there or the options for that? Any folks thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to do this. I could really use some technical support to get started. We're here for that too. All right, well, I see Liz typing, so I'll see what she has to say. But I guess what I would say here is thank you all for attending this presentation. Thank you for taking your lunch break to join us. I can hang on the line here until 1. We can kind of keep it as like an office hours. But if you don't have any questions, feel free to drop off and really, truly, you know, send us an email at any point if you hit any roadblocks as you get started. So thanks all.
Emily, I did have one thing. In terms of the location updates, I don't know that we're going to need to do this or want to do this, but if we have a program or a project that has like multiple project locations, I know like with Fight the Flood we've done in the past had like the project had multiple distinct points as part of that project location. Is that acceptable, or are you trying to stay away from that with this update?
Good question. I'm going to turn that to Liz
Yeah.
or Johanna. Yeah.
Do you have a shapefile with all the points, Carolyn?
So the specific example that I'm thinking of is we have this drainage program where we like support stormwater. We support essentially like small stormwater issue mitigation in various locations across the county. And I don't think like the individual actions wouldn't amount to things I would want to submit on their own, but maybe, you know, those, the combined thing could go under a design, you know, stormwater design project umbrella. And I think we do have shapefiles or at least coordinates for all of them. If not, I think we could create a shapefile for it.
Okay. I think if you have specific points, we can probably figure out how to do that. I mean, the other way, if it's more of, you know, kind of a countywide program, is to just have that kind of show throughout the county.
Yeah.
But yeah, either coordinates or a shapefile with the specific points if you want to kind of have every individual location show. But this might be an example where it might just be easier to kind of say it's a countywide project, depending
Yeah, I
on
was
your
trying to think.
preference.
Is there any benefit to having it show like location specific? Probably not, I guess.
Are you tracking it as kind of one big program versus individual projects?
I mean, the drainage team is tracking it as individual projects, but I think
Mhm.
for the flood mitigation purposes, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, that's helpful though. I'll give it some more thought and talk with the team a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, definitely let us know what's easiest for you, because it sounds like it is potentially quite a few points.
Yeah. There's a lot of complaints and of interest. Small projects. Cool.